Let's look at system design. And I really like what Elon Musk says about the Gigafactory. And it's easy to design a car, relatively speaking, but to design a machine that creates a car is incredibly difficult. And I would say it's relatively easy to design a life. But to design a system, a culture, a machine that creates rich and beautiful lives is a huge challenge. And there's a couple of different perspectives that I want to bring to bear on this question of how to design great systems of creating systems. And the first thing is to be aware of is that all systems are nested within other systems. The body is a system. It's nested in the house. The house is a system. It's nested in the community. The community is a system. It's nested in the larger ecology. You get the idea. So systems nest within systems, and the interface between the system and the systems in which it is nested is an important interface and part of the system. This is particularly true because all systems flow into one another. And so all of the energy, to some extent, will flow from the environment, from the larger system into the smaller system. It's actually an interesting loop. So the larger system is defined and created by the smaller systems within it. We can think of the cell, in the biology of the body, and that these cells are created and nourished out of the system around. So you've got this constant flow from the inner systems into the outer systems. The next thing to look at is that for it to be a system, and certainly a comprehensive system, it needs to be cradle to grave, 360 degrees, meaning every system contains the inhale and the exhale, and every point in between. Every system, a system of life begins with the birth, but ends with the death and the new birth. And so a system takes things 360 degrees. So a system of employment must begin with defining the parameters of employment, then articulating those parameters, then recruiting, then interviewing, then training and adjusting, then monitoring, and then retiring or firing people back out of the system. And so for a system to be intelligent and complete, it's got to be circular. It ends where it begins. Secondly, or I guess thirdly, as a paradigm, all system design needs to function within a framework that is intelligent. And intelligence boils down to the efficiency with which energy, time, money, and resources are transformed into human well-being. And so to measure the intelligence of a system requires data. Data about what? Data at all points of the system. Data about what? Data about the well-being generated at all points of a system. So to measure the intelligence of a system, one would take the number of human hours consumed in the system. If it's a living community, the number of human hours spent creating the houses, etc., and then living in the houses. So the number of hours consumed, the number of natural resources consumed, and then the amount of money, of electricity, etc., consumed in the system. One then divides that energy per capita amongst the people in the system. So if it's a housing community and we have 5,000 people in the community. Well, let's say 100 people. We have 100 people in the community. And we determine that it's taken 1 million units of energy, 3,000 hours in time, or, $20 million in manufacturing costs, and now we have a community. You add that up, divide it by capita, units of energy per person, and measure the well-being of everyone in that system on an ongoing basis. And you have two forms of energy investment. One is creation, and the other is maintenance. In a housing community, in Philippines on the island of Palawan, it will take a family 2 weeks and some nearby bamboo to create a house for about 8 years. And it will require $100 in nails. So you've got nails, you've got natural bamboo, and that family is perfectly happy. And so you've got units per energy, and in a family of 8 people are happy. So you measure the well-being, you measure the $100 of nails, and then you compare that with 8 people in an American suburb who might take $3 million and be unhappy. And that defines the intelligence of the system. The intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is transformed into human well-being. Human well-being on what levels? Mentally, emotionally, and physically. Now, there are other dimensions that are hybrid, logistics, culture, money, etc. But money is only a medium of exchange. And so, whether people are millionaires or whether they're don't have a penny or even know what money is, if they are in good health, if they are satisfied with their lives, if their relationships are enjoyable, they both have, and equally so, they have a similar level of well-being. There's another point in this process. So we've got data coming in from all sides about mental, emotional, physical health, and also about the trajectories of that. That's an important part of the system. And it ties in with things such as money and natural resources. Because, for example, if you measure one system that has a high burn rate, think of it as a startup. If you measure one system that has a high burn rate where it's blowing through $1 million a week and you've got 20 people involved, and you've got another system that has a generative rate, meaning it's generating positive cash flow after all expenses of $1,000 a week for the same 20 people. So all expenses plus $1,000 a week versus all expenses and blowing through $1 million a week. That is, the burn rate is not sustainable. And so part of the intelligence of a system is its sustainability. For example, in chemical agriculture, we run through more than 1 billion tons of soil a year because we don't protect the topsoil, and that is not a sustainable system versus the 20 years or so it takes to make several inches of topsoil. So in that framework, we have to measure the underlying assets of a system and their trend and value a system that is generating net underlying assets versus depleting net underlying assets. And so that's part of intelligence. Anyone who can design a system that builds soil, that reduces chemical load in the body, that increases vitality and joy in family life, that increases safety, reduces the death rate, reduces child mortality, and generates $2,000 a month per week in positive cash flow per person, is a more intelligent system than a system that has the same outflow, but it's depleting the soil, it's depleting the economy, the relationships are getting frayed, trust is weakening, etc. And it's incredibly important to understand this framework of intelligence and system design. So next we come to a couple of priorities. And the human brain is designed to survive, and as a result, it tends to amplify negativity, threats to survival, by 5 to 1. And to get a sense of this, all you need to know is if you go into a crowded room, most of the crowd is not going to stand out to you. But if one person raises a gun and fires a shot, all eyes turn to the one person. And this highlights the fact that the brain prioritizes threat and pain, which is a form of threat, a symptom of threat, over pleasure and joy and this kind of thing. Now, what this means is that you get a higher return on investment, eliminating pain, particularly life-threatening pain, than you do generating pleasure. In other words, if you are in a family and one person is having their leg amputated and screaming, and you can choose to change the movie for everyone else in the family who's listening to the screaming, and from a mediocre movie to a great movie, or you can eliminate the pain in the person whose leg's being amputated. The whole family system will benefit if you turn to the person whose leg's being amputated and give them a dose of morphine. Once pain has been brought down to 0, then you get a good return on increasing pleasure and well-being, etc. So the first principle is you eliminate pain points within the system before you turn to other things. And in this sense, it's one of the reasons you need full spectrum data, because for a system to thrive within brain biology, you need to know who's in the most pain within the system. And it is in everyone's interest to get that down to 0 as the first priority. Second is ensuring survival. So I'm not in immediate pain, but I'm in anxiety. There's something coming. I'm sick. Survival is not secure. So the second place to focus on, and again, if you have one person in the family who's dying, and everyone else is, not fully happy with their career, turning the attention to stop the death, to get oxygen into the lung, to stitch up the body, etc. So to ensure survival is the next priority of an intelligent system. And then the third point, so now we've got reduced pain and ensuring survival. The next point is to move towards an environment conducive to realizing the potential of the human being, to facilitate healthy, loving relationships as the first part of that potential, personal development and growth. So you want to create an environment that is conducive, that makes that easy and natural. And this is the core part of an intelligent system for creating healthy human beings. Now, when there is chronic pain, it means there is a failure in the system, period. Chronic pain means one of two things. Either the data is not being collected and fed back into the system, or that the system lacks intelligence. Because when a system fails to understand that it is interrelated, it lacks intelligence. And so you have egoic behavior where one person in the system will up the pain of another to lower their own personal pain or to increase their pleasure. Now, whenever increasing pleasure is done by sabotaging, causing someone else pain, that's actually a net negative. The pain is going to register 5 times louder than the pleasure, so the community is going into debt. But in the kind of narrow and uneducated self-centeredness, as opposed to the enlightened self-interest, when people know that a given member of the system is in pain and they don't respond, the system starts to deteriorate. But more importantly, it is a symptom of a lack of comprehension about what a system is and how it works. There's all kinds of pain that can spread, and pain is a virus, just like every other emotion. There's all kind of pain that can spread when we don't understand the systems of which we are a part. So chronic pain equals system failure. And one of the most important parts of a system is to educate the people in the system about the role of a system and about their role in the system, the system's role to facilitate minimizing pain and growth and well-being and survival for them, and their role to grow and evolve the intelligence of the system. Because in order for life to continue, a system must continue to evolve. It's the most important thing to evolve because the system is the environment. And you can look at the system of culture, and you take that into a technical term. If you do not have the right amount of saline solution, there are certain bacteria that will not grow. Period. You can inject thousands and thousands and thousands, and every single one will die because the culture is not conducive for that particular pattern to replicate itself. And it's the job of the people in the system to design systems that are cultures that make it natural, healthy, and easy to replicate an intelligent experience. Intelligent, again, being the efficiency with which energy is transformed into human well-being. Now, there's one other part that's kind of important in the evolution of life, and all systems are circular, and so there's a forward momentum. And what this means in the course of time is that throughout the process of a complete revolution of the system, every single part will be focused on, will make contact. If you think of a bicycle wheel, for the bicycle to turn, every spoke has to get the closest spoke to the ground for that bicycle to turn at one point in another. And you can also see the tension within a bicycle wheel, that you have 2 spokes going in opposite direction, and together they hold the wheel in place. In fact, so this is kind of a paradoxical formation where you have spokes at 180 degrees, and they are both equally important in maintaining the integrity of the circle. And what this gets to is the fact that, there's a certain point within any system where it's all about eating. There's a certain point in a system where it's all about sleeping. There's a certain point in the system where it's all about giving. There's a certain point in the system where it's all about receiving. There's a certain point in the system where it's all about evacuating what was eaten and waking up. And so you have these polarities that in both small cycles and in large cycles need to focus on different things at different times. And what this means is that for forward momentum to occur, the emphasis is shifting. So with a bicycle pedal, first you push forward, then you push forward some more, then you push down, then you let go, and then the other leg pushes forward and it pushes forward, and together you turn the wheel. Now, it's important to have a sense of the direction and momentum of the various systems in which you're a part, and to go through a revolutionary process that in a pendulum dynamic is expressed by you go all the way to the left and then you go all the way to the right, and then you go all the way to the left and all the way to the right. You elect some Democrats, then you elect some Republicans. You say it's all about me, and then you say it's all about everyone else. You say it's time to get moving, and then you say it's time to rest. So you're going through systems. You're going through opposites. And this oppositional movement is necessary for forward momentum. If you say, I'm only going to work harder and harder and I'm not going to rest, well, first of all, you burn out the system. But secondly, you get frozen in one position and the wheel stops. It's got to be a continual forward motion in the right sequence. So you've got to understand the momentum of your system and participate together and be aware of that. And this plays a role in determining policy, because at any given point, your system is at different points in a revolution, and it needs to continue forward in the direction that it's going to keep its momentum and to keep its balance. So you have to have a sense of where it's going and participate actively in building that momentum of the system. And that system needs to be in scale with the people involved, meaning, the human body needs to sleep every 24 hours. And so you can't have a system that says, okay, you work for 4 days and then you sleep for 2 days, and then you work for 4 days and sleep for that's out of scale. It's the same amount of sleep, it's just out of rhythm with the body. And when we're talking about systems related to human beings, the human being is the ultimate part in this system. And so what we're really trying to do is attune to the biology of our environment and of the body, and build systems that are attuned to those rhythms that flow with the rhythms of our body, since to create human well-being within the framework of the human body, we must reference the underlying system that we're connected to, because even in the somewhat artificial split between heart, mind, and body, between feelings, thoughts, and sensations, this is to some extent an illusionary split, because every feeling changes the biology of the body. Every body change changes the way we feel. Every thought changes our feelings, thus changing the body. Every body change influences our thoughts, if not changing our thought. For example, if something goes like that, I'm thinking, why did that happen? So the body migrates to the thought. What happens to the thought migrates to the body. I had a thought about this video, then I had a feeling about this video, and then I came down and actually touched the record button and made this video. They are interconnected systems, and they're all present in this body. And so the intelligence with which energy is transformed into human well-being must reference the scale of the human body, and the data coming in from all people in a given system is how is the heart, mind, and physical body of every person in the system, and what can be done. How do we design a system that eliminates unnecessary pain, and certainly unnecessary chronic pain, from all parts of the system?